Hi, biology. This is Miss Satterley. I'm going to go over the first lesson today. This PowerPoint is labeled the themes of biology, and that's the first unit that we'll do. So there are 7 themes of biology that we're going to talk about today. But first off, what is biology? Biology is the study of life or scientific study of life. Biology ranges anywhere from tiny microscopic structures that you use a microscope to view to global ecosystems or organism interactions. That would include how organisms react to their environment and how they live in their environment. The picture is a picture of a fossil that is one of the first organisms. It was a single-celled organism. There are very simple shapes to the structure, and it is estimated to be 3.5 billion years old. So here's a picture that shows us the 7 themes of biology: cell structure and function, reproduction, metabolism, homeostasis, heredity, evolution, and interdependence. Everything in biology is focused on these 7 themes. They can be interrelated. You can talk about a topic that will cover more than one, or a topic will only have one involved. So let's look at each of these topics in more detail. First off, cell structure and function. This has to do with the cell. A cell is the smallest unit of life capable of all life's functions. Cells are small. They have a highly organized structure and may contain organelles. There are 2 types of cells. We have prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Only eukaryotes have a nucleus and other organelles within them. This is actually a picture of an animal cell, and an animal cell is a type of eukaryotic cell. Organelles. Organelles are specialized compartments that carry out cell processes. This is something that we'll talk about in about a month and a half, depending on how fast we can go through this. But we'll learn the different organelles and we'll learn the functions and the importance of each one. Okay, organisms are made of and develop from cells. No matter what type of organism you have, they are either going to be unicellular or multicellular. In biology, we're going to focus on root words to help us understand what words mean. So uni means single or one, and multi is more than one. So if you understand what the word means, you can remember what these definitions are. A unicellular organism is one that is composed of one cell. Multicellular are composed of many cells. Down below here, we have a picture of 3 different types of unicellular organisms: the amoeba, paramecium, and euglena. All of these are animal cells. They are single-celled organisms. You can see the nucleus in them. The nucleus is usually the most prominent structure within the cell, and then they have some different structures. There's a process called differentiation. This is where a single cell can become different from one another. So when an organism develops, the first cell that we start with is called the zygote. So that's when the egg and sperm join. You start with a zygote. The zygote then goes through a process of mitosis and forms different types of cells. And then these cells go through differentiation. So they become different. If you look at the picture, we have nerve cells, blood cells, muscle, adipose, which is fat, intestinal cells, and bone tissue. So all of these originate from the same type of cell, but depending on what DNA is turned on and off, they will look different as they develop. All cells, no matter what type of cell we have, contain 4 things: a cell membrane, genetic material, cytoplasm, and ribosomes. In the picture, we have the 2 types of cells: prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Now, prokaryotic cells are going to be bacteria and other smaller organisms. They don't have the membrane-bound organelles that a eukaryotic cell will have. They do have a membrane, DNA, cytoplasm, and ribosomes, though. Prokaryotes are the first type of cell I'm going to talk about, and then we'll discuss eukaryotes. Prokaryotes are cells that lack organelles in a nucleus. DNA inside of a prokaryotic cell is usually in the form of a plasmid, and a plasmid is a circular structure of DNA. Sometimes the DNA in a prokaryotic cell is jumbled up in a mass, but it's always in the center of the cell. And the DNA in a prokaryotic cell is found in the cytoplasm. Now, eukaryotes are cells that contain organelles and a nucleus. So "eu" actually means true, and karyote means kernel. In that case, we're actually referring to the nucleus itself. So eukaryote means true nucleus. So eukaryotes, if you can remember that. Also, another thing I want to point out, nucleus, the word nucleus has a U in it, and eukaryotes also has a U in it. So that's another way to remember which one is which. DNA inside of eukaryotes is a double helix, which is located in the nucleus, and the nucleus is usually found in the center of the cell. Reproduction is the next theme we're going to talk about. So our second theme, reproduction is the ability to reproduce from one generation to the next. There are two types of reproduction depending on the type of organism or cell that we have. We have asexual and sexual. So here's another prefix that I want you guys to understand the meaning of. It's A. A means not or without. So asexual means not sex. So there is no two organisms involved. It is one single organism that is reproducing copies of itself. That's going to happen in single-celled organisms. Now, sexual reproduction is different because it requires two individuals, a male and female, and they're going to exchange genetic material. And that is sexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction does not involve the union of gametes. Gametes are sex cells. Sex cells are going to depend on the sex of the individual. So females are going to produce eggs and males will produce sperm. This is the same throughout the animal kingdom and plants as well. They have sperm. Asexual reproduction is also called binary fission. Fission means to break apart. And binary is bi means two. So that is when you have a species that splits into two. If you look at the picture, we have an organism going through binary fission. So the parent cell is going to split into two and form two daughter cells. And these daughter cells are going to be identical to the parent. Bacteria will go through this process. And that, again, that's binary fusion. Now, sexual reproduction is different because gametes from opposite sexes will unite to form a zygote. Sexual reproduction is when you have the egg and sperm are going to join together. When the zygote forms, you end up with genetic material from both parents, and the zygote is going to become the new individual going through that process called differentiation, which we discussed earlier. Now, meiosis is how we get these gametes. Meiosis is the production of sex cells, or gametes. And down in the picture, we show that the egg comes from a female and the sperm comes from males, and then you get the zygote, which eventually forms the embryo. Now, we'll get into reproduction later on when we talk about mitosis and meiosis, but that will be second semester. A third theme is metabolism. Metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions in the body. There are two types of metabolism, catabolism and anabolism. Now, we're going to discuss the two different types. Now, they do the opposite of each other. One of them builds up molecules and the other one breaks down molecules. So catabolism is actually the process of breaking down, and anabolism is building up. So when we look at this, I want you to remember what anabolic steroids are. So anabolic steroids are illegal steroids that some individuals use to help build muscle mass. So anabolic steroids, anabolism, a building up of molecules. Catabolism is the breaking down of molecules during metabolism. So if any of you have cats can get into things and break things. So that's a way to remember what catabolism and anabolism are. So catabolism is when it's a process that's going to happen in your digestive system where you eat food and your body breaks down the food molecules into smaller molecules. And then those small molecules are actually used again in your body to form proteins and other structures that you need. Metabolism also deals with energy use. All living things use energy for three things: to grow, to move, and to process information. No matter what type of organism we have, everything grows, everything moves in some way, and also they are processing stimulus from their environment. All energy comes from the sun. Almost all energy comes from the sun. Some come from chemicals, and we'll talk about that later this semester. The process of energy being captured from the sun is called photosynthesis. Plants are able to use photosynthesis. Some bacteria and algae are all able to do this. And that is where an organism will capture sunlight and convert it into chemical energy, which is the type of food source that's found in things that we eat. Now, metabolism also deals with something called autotrophs and heterotrophs. Autotrophs are organisms that can make their own food. Auto means self. So autotroph itself literally means self-feeding. Now, heterotrophs are organisms that must eat other organisms. Those are going to be herbivores, carnivores, omnivores. So any organism that eats something else, no matter what it is. Hetero means different, so that means different eaters. So they have to eat something that they need. So auto is self-eating and hetero is different, so they have to consume others. So we have a picture over here. The autotroph example I have is a fern, and then the heterotroph is a red panda, which is a type of mammal. Now, more examples of autotrophs and heterotrophs. We have plants, cyanobacteria, and algae. The picture, I have a variety of different plants. Those look like household plants that you might have at home. The picture right below it looks like a green-blue ladder. Cyanobacteria, they are green-blue. Those are green-blue algae. That has to do with the chlorophyll that they have in them. And then we also have algae. Algae are what we call colonial organisms. So they're actually single-celled organisms that live together as a unit, and they act like a organism themselves working together. So that's what the algae is, the green circles below. Now, heterotrophs, again, are organisms that have to eat. That includes animals and fungus. Animals are mammals, birds, reptiles, insects, fish, all of these different things. And then fungus are going to include mushrooms, mold, and other organisms like that. Now, fungus are unique because they actually cause organisms to go through a decaying process, and they help release nutrients back into the environment. Our fourth theme, homeostasis. Homeostasis is the process of maintaining a stable internal environment. Now, that is one of the things you need to know. You also need to know the definition of metabolism. Now, homeostasis is going to involve process of sweating and shivering. Your body temperature is super important. Your body temperature has to be at a certain degree, within a certain degree set, in order for your body to function properly. So that's why when you get a fever, you feel sick. You're not going to be able to do the things you normally would because your body is not able to do what it needs to do. Now, if you get too hot, your body sweats, and through the process of evaporation, the sweat actually is going to remove heat from the surface to help cool you down. Now, shivering, if you get too cold, there's two responses that will happen. One, the hair on your arms will actually go up. Now, it doesn't work as well as other mammals because we don't have a lot of hair to insulate, but the whole purpose of that is to create a layer of air that helps insulate the organism. That's why we get goosebumps. The other thing is shivering. So if you are cold, you might start to shiver. Your mouth might start to chatter a little bit. And that's because when your muscles are involuntary contracting to form heat. So when your muscles work or your muscles move, they're actually creating heat. So if you get too cold, your body's going to just take care of that itself and start to shiver to help raise your body temperature. Okay, our next theme is heredity. Heredity is the transmission of genetic traits from parents to offspring. Every piece of DNA in your body you get from half from your mother and half from your father. You have a set of genes that's actually a combination of one set from your mother and one set from your father. Those are different alleles. and that has to do with heredity. Heredity has to do with DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA is the structure that is found in most living things. Some have RNA, but DNA is the molecule in your body that has all of your hereditary information. DNA is important because it gives your body instructions to determine what you look like, determine how to metabolize food, and all of these different things. Now, DNA is in different locations depending on the organism that we're dealing with. So again, back to cell structure and function, we have eukaryotes and prokaryotes. Eukaryotes are enclosed in a nucleus, and the nucleus is found in the center of the cell. Prokaryotes are located in a plasmid, which is a circular loop, which is found in the cytoplasm. So earlier, I did mention that when I talked about plasmids, that the plasmids are found in the cytoplasm. So we have a picture over here of a double helix. That is what DNA looks like. It is a twisted ladder structure that's formed of 4 different molecules: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. DNA is something that we'll talk more about later on the semester and second semester. DNA is made up of segments of genes. A gene is a short segment of DNA. Genes are going to hold information to determine different parts or physical features of your body. Genes are going to contain instructions for development and determine what you'll look like. And down below, we have a chromosome. Chromosome is a group of DNA that's very tightly bound together, and it's full of different genes. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, so they have 46. 44 are called autosomes, which are every organism has 22 pairs of autosomes. And then depending on your sex, male or female, you're going to have sex chromosomes, and that's your 23rd pair. An X and Y for male and 2 X's for females. And again, we'll get into that later on. Now, our next theme is evolution. Evolution is simply change over time. Evolution is how biologists and other scientists can look and see how organisms are related, how subtle changes can happen over time that maybe you'll end up with organisms that look different, but you can look back at their evolution and see that they were more similar at one point. Evolution does not happen to an individual. Evolution is something that happens within a population, which is a group of individuals. Evolution is based on mutation, so random mutations in DNA. And what a mutation is a change in DNA. And that can cause some feature to be different from before in that single organism. And then that mutation can be passed on to their offspring. And that's how changes happen over time. We will get into evolution more at the end of this semester and also beginning of next semester. And we'll look at dogs, which are an example of artificial selection. The humans have bred dogs to get different breeds, but they all originate from one source. Evolution, the most important driving force of evolution is natural selection. That's one of the things that will be a homework question, so make sure you highlight that. Okay, what natural selection is? Natural selection states that organisms that are better suited to their environment are better able to survive and reproduce. Natural selection is a process that's going to cause gradual change in traits. So if you look at the picture here, we have some birds that are eating beetles, and they seem to be favoring the green beetles. So they eat the green beetles. The orange beetles are able to produce more offspring, and over time, eventually the green beetles die out, and you have all orange ones. Our last theme is interdependence. Interdependence has to do with ecology and deals with the ecosystems. So interdependence is the process that states that organisms are dependent on their environment. All organisms need your environment. You need shelter, food, water, and all of these things originate in the ecosystem. Now, ecology has to do with interdependence. Ecology is the study of interactions between organisms with one another and their environment. Ecology is something we will get into in a more detail second semester. Now, interdependence has to do with these nutrients and things that organisms need from their environment. They need nutrients, water, and gases. The types of nutrients that organisms get from their environments include phosphorus, nitrogen, and carbon, water, all things need water, and also gases, including oxygen and carbon dioxide. So, oxygen is important for all organisms, no matter what type we have. Carbon dioxide is more important for plants and other organisms that produce or use the process of photosynthesis to produce their own food, because the carbon dioxide is converted into carbs. Photosynthesis and cellular respiration are two things that we'll learn in a few months during the semester. Okay, that is our last slide for today. I hope everything went well for our first lecture. Make sure you take your notes. Make sure you take the time to look at your notes. Your homework assignment will be opened up Tuesday. And do not try to do that unless you've actually listened to the lesson and you have taken your notes. It's very straightforward if you have your notes in front of you. Again, if there's something that you have a question on, just let me know. You can message me on Google Classroom. You can write a comment on the assignment. Again, if there's something you have trouble with, please let me know. Thank you.